Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Commodore room. Today we're going to look at this Commodore 128. I got this in an estate sale, probably several years ago, and unfortunately have not had a chance to even power it up yet. The person that I bought this from had a business that developed Commodore software. I believe it was business software. I really don't know a lot of the details on it, but they had a lot of really interesting equipment, and this is just one of the items that they had. So I've never powered it on, don't have any idea if it works. It has definitely got some stickers and some cosmetic issues, and as you can see, it's fairly yellowed. So I thought it might be fun to just fire this thing up and see what happens. Okay, this is the first power on of this machine in at least 4 years that I know of, and probably quite a bit longer. Power light comes on, that's a good sign. So as we can see here, it does appear to function. Let's go ahead and type on a few keys here and just see what happens. So far, so good. Let's go ahead and go to 64 mode just to see what happens. Well, so far, so good. We're going to go ahead and put in a test cartridge, and let's just see how this runs. Semiconductors generally will fail a couple different places, I guess, in the power cycle. So initially powering them up, sometimes that initial surge of electricity will cause them to fail, especially if they're older or had manufacturing defects. And another case is heat. So if something in there is bad or is going bad, it'll warm up and then fail. And if you've watched our channel, you've seen some of the machines that we've ran into in the past where once they got warm, weird things would start to happen. So I'm going to let it run for a little bit, and then I'm going to put a test cartridge in it, and we'll just see what happens. Okay, we've got our 128 with the harness all wired up. Uses the same harness as the 64. So let's go ahead and fire it up. And let's see what our errors look like now. The 128 obviously has a lot more memory and a lot of other things to check. So it's going to take a little bit longer than it does on the 64. But it does work pretty well. And let's see what happens. So everything's looking pretty good. The keyboard connector is open because I don't have the little dongle on there, so that's expected. So we're going to let this run a few more times. This is a great sign. It's not very often that I get an old machine like this that doesn't have any problems, and it's been on for a while too, so that's good. So we'll zoom in just real quick. There you can see our current draw is about 2.1 amps, which is not unrealistic for these machines, and I've seen that, that number or something close to that number quite a bit. Thing to keep in mind is this obviously has twice the amount of memory. The 128 also had 2 video chips. It also had 2 CPUs and can run in 3 different operating modes. So the architecture is really kind of interesting. I've always liked these machines because of just how quirky they were and all the cool stuff you could do with them if you really wanted to push the limits. Sadly, there wasn't a lot of software that took advantage of them, and that's too bad. There were certain things out there that could use some of the capabilities, but a lot of the software that was made back when this machine was new really just didn't take advantage of the capabilities. What most of the software did was just run the 64 mode. So really, most people that had these ran them in 64 mode so they could be backwards compatible. Although there was some really cool things that you could do with them. And so we will pull this apart. We're going to do some retro brighting. We'll clean it up. This could make a good machine for somebody. I've got quite a few already. So we'll get this thing cleaned up and looking nice and make sure everything still works okay when we're done. And then we'll go from there.
So we're going to go ahead and disassemble this 128. This machine is approaching 35 years old, and it's got a lot of yellowing and a fair amount of dirt and other goo stuck to it, as you'll see here in just a minute. So we're going to go ahead and take the case completely apart so we can retro bright.
So let me show you something that I got that I think is pretty neat. This is a little Craftsman parts bin. And the cool part about it, there's actually 2 neat things that you guys might like. One, it's collapsible, so it's easy to store when you're not using it. And the other thing, as you can see, it's magnetic. So when you put little parts in there, they fall to the bottom and they stick. So I've never seen one of these before. It was really cheap. It was like $5 or something. So I got a couple of them, but really handy. When you're working on stuff, you can collapse them and put them up when you're not using them. And when you drop little things like this, the springs, they stick right to the bottom. So I thought you guys might like that.
Obviously, the Commodore 128 has a lot more keys, so this is going to take a little bit longer. One thing, when you're pulling key caps off the Commodore 128, definitely want to use this puller that you see me using here. The way these are designed are quite a bit different than the 64, and honestly, I find them a little easier to break if you don't pull them straight up. So the keycap puller here is a must-have if you don't want to damage it.
Okay, so there's the keyboard torn apart. As you can see, it's pretty grimy and some dust bunnies and God knows what else is in there. I did notice some of the big dust bunnies were really clogging up some of the plungers and whatnot. So while the keyboard did seem to work okay to me, I didn't see anything, at least electrically, wrong with it. I did feel some kind of grimy keys, or the keys were sort of binding up a little bit. So I'm sure it's because of all this dirt. So I'm going to go ahead and clean all this up, and then we'll do some retro writing on the keys. The one bad thing, of course, about the 128 is there's just so many keys. It takes a lot longer, but that's okay. We'll see if we can get it done relatively quickly. So what I'm doing is I'm soaking the keys in a pretty heavy 409 and water solution. The idea is to lift as much dirt off of those keys as possible, and then I'll wipe them down real good, and then we'll get to the retro bright. Definitely don't want to retro bright a key that's dirty, or anything really that's dirty, because then that dirt gets in the way and you'll end up with a very weird result if you were to try that. So this is hot water. I'll let it soak for a couple hours, and then I'll come wipe off each key individually. So what I've got here are all the key caps pulled off, and I laid a piece of saran wrap down, put the peroxide gel over them, and then took each key and basically with some rubber gloves kind of massaged the cream around, and then put another layer of saran wrap on top. I'm always trying different ways to get a good result with the keys, and I've had some mixed results with everything that I've tried. The liquid works pretty well. The gel I seem to have a little bit better luck with, but what I do is I'll keep it under the lights, and then I'll rotate it, let it cook for a little while, rotate it, let it cook for a while, and sometimes that helps. And actually most of the time I have pretty good results with the keys. I'll let this sit for probably a few hours. The lights I use are pretty bright and work pretty quickly, and I've already started to see a pretty big difference. So I come in here every so often, kind of rub the cream around to make sure I don't get any marbling or streaking or anything when this is done. But that's what I'm going to try this time, and we'll see how it comes out. Okay, so the next step is to try to clean this plastic up as best we can. As you can see, there's a lot of stickers on here. Not sure how well that's going to come off, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean it real good, peel this off as best I can. I may have to soak this for a while because it's been on there for, I'm sure, decades. So soak this as best I can in some water in 409, and then we'll see how well the adhesive has come off. And I've got a few other tricks up my sleeve if that doesn't do the job, and I don't suspect it will, but at least I'll make a good start. So yeah, these stickers are really on there strong, so I'm going to 409 these, let it sit for a little while, and try to get at least the big parts of the sticker off, and then we'll come back hopefully when the paper is gone and work on the adhesive. Okay, the 409 is set for probably about 35-40 minutes. So what I'm going to do is try the toothbrush and see, you can see how that is coming off. So there's still some adhesive there that I can see, but we're getting there. So I'm going to keep doing this all over, and I'll zoom over here so you can see. I'm going to do the same thing over here. This sticker was quite a bit tougher just by feeling it, so you can see that it is working, but it's going to take a little bit longer. So I'm going to let it soak a little bit, and then maybe try something else if that doesn't work. So we'll let it soak a little bit longer. Alright, getting the big piece of tape off there. It was sort of like a big piece of like a medical tape, like you would use to tape your ankle up or something. So that's kind of what it felt like. A lot of adhesive you can see there. So we're going to let the 409 soak a little bit more, and then while it's doing that, I'm going to sort of scrub all over and get some of the big pieces of dirt off since I'm letting it soak. Take advantage of that. So it's getting there. I got the top clamshell pretty clean. I got all the adhesive off, primarily with 409, and then a little bit of baking soda and a toothbrush, which is a good way to sort of a light abrasive to peel off any other remaining adhesive. So that worked pretty good. Now I'm going to go to the bottom half of the clamshell, which I will show you here. You can see this one's pretty gross. So we're going to get it cleaned up, definitely get all that, and then also get to the bottom and get all these little smudge marks off, as you can see here. And then I think we're ready to put it under the lights for retro bright. I may take off these rubber feet, kind of depends on how they fare the cleaning. Sometimes they get real gummy and sort of really sticky and kind of come off on your fingers, in which case I'll pull them. But if they don't get too hard and they're in decent shape when I'm done, I'll leave them on.
So I'm going to take the same approach with the case. Lay some saran wrap, put the case on there with the cream, and I'm going to use a paintbrush to coat the case nicely, and then lay some saran wrap on top to stop it from evaporating. I'll put it under the lights, rotate it every so often, and then massage the cream so that I don't get any marbling or streaking. The keyboard is already done, so as soon as this is finished, we're going to put it all back together, and you can see what it looks like now. So as you can see here, we've got our 128 put back together, and honestly, it looks really good. The Retro Bright came out really well. Everything is very white and crisp, and it looks as good as new. So in the second video in this Restore and Explore series, we're going to explore the Commodore 128, and I'm going to show you why I think this is such a cool machine. So let's take one final look at this 128 before, and this is what it looks like now. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap this video up for today. Don't forget the Commodore Room is on Instagram at the Commodore Room. We post a lot of pictures on there about some future projects, and I'll show you one here real quick. This is the wall of disk drives. I've been thinking about what we could do to make a video about these disk drives. So feel free to leave some comments here or on Instagram if you have some ideas. I've hoped you've enjoyed your time in the Commodore Room today, and I hope you come hang out in the Commodore Room again with us real soon.